I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad to see all of you. It's a fascinating experience to watch what's going on in Europe in this industry. I was with Obama 1, helped write the Affordable Care Act in the United States, and then started in Washington State, one of the first two to legalize recreational THC cannabis use. Unlike most lawyers, I was already working in CBD at that time and have been working with CBD companies for going on 6 years. It's an interesting differential, and yet the parallels are very similar. We're watching history, we all say that, but it's the commercialization of something that has been around for a very long time. And in formalizing and regulating it, many countries and states and local jurisdictions are seeing financial benefits. So I'm going to talk to you. So I'm an attorney, but I also have worked in business and have an executive MBA from Australia when I did business management consulting there. So I come at this from a very commercial perspective and work with businesses that from startups to multinational, transnational companies. I'm going to talk on 3 major topics today. I'm going to hit on the key points of the CBD medical market, the CBD recreational market, and the future and planning now for your future as company owners. So I'm just going to ask for a quick show of hands. Any cultivators or growers? Any manufacturers, product development, right? Any people that are doing retail online or retail stores? Well, you're almost evenly divided. That's interesting, with cultivators being underrepresented. And then ancillary businesses, people that are doing marketing, services, good. And then I also ancillary products. So people that are doing formulations or developments of products that can or be infused with either or CBD or hemp. So again, we're looking at this sort of segregation of the hemp and the THC markets right now. And it's a lot easier for people to understand. I don't know, any of you caught the earlier presentation, the 0.3%, the magic number that everyone has chosen to link into, and falling under that or over that, and what's the THC component. And I just had an interesting conversation with someone on the floor that I don't consume any CBD products because I don't trust them at this point not to have too much THC. And as an attorney, I'm not interested in THC right now. But I'm going to go back to the medical market. There's so much opportunity right now for companies that are looking at research and development in this area. As of now, we don't know the full potential that CBD offers. There will be a CBD pharmaceutical level medication. There will be the next level, which is sort of the supplement and additives on a medical level that have claims for anxiety or pain or sleep, or those sorts of everyday, sort of what we would consider over-the-counter level medications. And then there will be the topicals and the lower levels that are again, lower level of regulatory requirements on vetting and testing. So the medical market is going to be huge in Europe. The market in Europe dwarfs even that of Canada and the United States. With 742 million people, you're way ahead of us. So it's fascinating to think about where you are now and where this could go. Under the medical, there's also so much precedent for your medical systems in Europe and in the UK to be supportive of new products. So I think it's an interesting opportunity for those companies that are paying attention to the future and where their products will fit as more regulations come online. Moving on to the recreational CBD market. So looking at, again, I think the estimates right now is that the recreational market in Europe will be 60 billion by 2028. That is the cannabis industry. That does include the whole range. But I think that what we're seeing in the United States is there are so many benefits to employment, new opportunities for entrepreneurs. We're looking at sustainable tax base, the benefits of that taxing, to all sorts of level of national and local governments, reduction in crime, reduction of black market, reduction of use by minors, which I think is fascinating, and the resources saved as well. The key to company owners, it's a complicated dance to walk through a highly regulated industry, and where there are some business considerations from the moment that you build your company until your exit strategy of either selling it or acquiring other companies and growing it. So I really like to talk with companies about the where you are with your branding, which seems to be making a huge difference. I quickly walked the floor, and it's fascinating that there's a divergence. There's the the leaves and the hipster kind of hardcore user side. And then there are the companies that are moving away from identifying with the traditional cannabis users and building a brand that fits in with the mainstream. It doesn't have leaves, it doesn't have the word cannabis, it doesn't use green or all of the other buzzwords that have been associated with cannabis products. You're looking at the sophistication of understanding that in branding, you want to have someone easily recognize whether that product is meant for them. We call that lifestyle branding. The regulations on advertising and marketing have an interesting play in branding, but what we're finding in the industry as it matures and develops is that the longevity of a company that doesn't associate with the old culture of illegal use are really going to be well positioned to navigate. It also has some bearing on the mundane things that we found tripped up a lot of companies, like banking and insurance and getting a mortgage if you run a cannabis company. There are all of these factors and considerations that until your industry is mature enough, you don't begin to realize the far-reaching effects of the stigma on this industry. So, some other critical factors beyond brand are the fascinating four I always run through is scalability, consistency, expansion, and your exit strategy. If you're the owner of a company, those are four things that should be in your plan from the first day. If you're looking at a lot of the CBD companies are making their own products, they're limited by the volume that they can create, even if they're working with a manufacturer. So scalability in CBD in the United States has gone from 1 million units a year to 1 million units a month. And to be able to take a company to that kind of fast build is really a challenge. And there are a lot of factors to consider in your supply chain and how that all functions. The next thing I talk about is consistency. And that is that how do you guarantee that the product that is purchased in one place and manufactured in one place is the same as it is manufactured in the other place? Right now, it's hard to imagine since the UK is just coming online and hopefully will leap over the EU's figuring out what they're going to do and do their own thing. We're hoping, right? Little independence would be good. And your market is going to experience that same sort of um, sudden trajectory when you're supplying the UK and suddenly the whole world wants your product and it's legal everywhere. In the United States, it's been legal since December of 2018. CBD products have been. And yet it's still fascinating to me how little has changed in that 10 months since that happened. So we're 9 months. Did I calculate wrong? It's scalability and consistency are two things that you have to consider now with what you're designing into your product. How complex are the formulations? How have you protected those formulations with intellectual property protections? It's really difficult in a startup situation to spend money on accountants and lawyers and taking care of securing all these rights. But if you are, and I'll skip over the fourth point and go straight to exit strategy. I always talk to my clients that are just starting their companies about there are two things that are going to happen here. Either you're going to grow into a large company or you're going to sell to a large company. And whether you want to run your company for as long as you want to run it, or whether you want to build it and sell it, you should start that process from the beginning. People often don't think about that it's a different pathway and you make different choices depending on where you're going. Expansion, so I'll go back to the fourth thing is, so the first thing again, scalability. The second thing is consistency. The third thing is expansion. So as I just spoke of in the fourth thing, which is exit strategy, you're either a small fish looking to get eaten by a big fish, or you're a small fish who is looking to grow into a big fish. When you're building your company and planning and figuring out what to do and where to spend your resources, there's always an expansion. I talk about expansion and people say, well, what do you mean? I'm running my company. Well, you're not going to run your company at the size that it was a year ago, now and forever. We all have to think in terms of building our company into a larger company, even if there's a limit. If you get to a certain place and say, okay, I'm big enough, I'm just going to stay here, you're probably not going to be around in 2 years. If you have a set clientele that has 90 other choices, that the costs are coming down on those choices because they are expanding, they're in a larger scale production and manufacturing process, you're kind of going to lose market share. So expansion is always on the horizon. You either get more customers or you increase your product line or both. I haven't talked a lot about regulation even though I'm an attorney. And it's a very difficult dance to figure out. It's hard enough to start a business. It's even harder when, as things are in CBD, the regulations are not clear. Even when they're written and done and on the books, it's still not clear how that impacts the day-to-day operation of your company. Working with someone who has experience, and it can be a lawyer, it can be another business owner, it can be a CPA, but you need to have somebody that has some experience in this industry because you can't make assumptions. It was fascinating. I was talking to a client the other day and they were talking about, well, nobody told me that there was this formula and you have to do X, Y, and Z in this order. And if you don't do this order, then you get kicked to the end of the line on your licensure process. And it's never written, published, or stated anywhere that that's the order. But anyone that has been through the licensure process would already know that. usually at this point would sort of say that I'm going to wrap things up. I don't know what your question level is, but I am curious to hear, and I will ask you questions if I don't get a lot of questions. But again, I think that the big point here is this is an opportunity of a lifetime. When I started in the United States, I said, this is the American dream. It's a brand new industry. Anyone can get into it. Yes, there are financial considerations. We broke those down. There were investors that were excited and willing to take a chance and roll the dice with a lot of my early companies. In Washington State, I represented a quarter of the legal industry. So I've seen about every kind of relationship, money sourcing, product line, branding strategy that you can imagine, from growers, processors, manufacturers, retailers, and support businesses. So here you are about to open the UK industry wide open with CBD. You all have visions, and I just hope that what I've said in a very short summary gives you a concept that what you're doing is fascinating. It presents almost limitless opportunity, whether that opportunity is about providing good products to consumers or making money or providing for your vision of what this industry should look like. There's a lot of different ways that this dream can be actualized, but it's the sign that you're here is already indicative that you're ready to learn. So I'm going to throw it out. Does anybody have any questions to start? Because if not, I'm going to come ask you questions.
I have some questions.
Okay, go.
This one? Okay, good. From a brand point of view, and we talked a little earlier about the longevity of a consumer life cycle, the overwhelming messaging at the moment is around a health benefit of some sort. What's your view in terms of the longer term view for a consumer company, if you will, who have a suite of products, in terms of what they can say, what they can't say, and how do you sort of see that playing out in terms of an advisory function for some of these guys here who are growers, retailers, manufacturers, and so on?
Mm-hmm. Well, that is the claims are where we get into a lot of trouble. CBD products in the United States are limited until they've gone through an FDA certification process. I assume that there will be a similar agency process here that verifies and validates the claim. We in the United States cannot advertise any medical benefit from CBD unless it has gone through the pharmaceutical level certification. And as I said, when I was going through the layers of certification, there is the pharmaceutical level, there is the ingestibles, the things that help us sleep or anxiety, and those are vitamin level. They're sort of like supplements. Those, again, have to have a certification to make those medical benefit claims. And then there's the topicals and the things that are sort of the feel good, where you're making a claim that, oh, this will make you feel happy, or this will, you couldn't substantiate them. They're mood enhancements. They're, help you relax at the end of the day, help you sleep, help your feet, all sorts of those non-specific, and they're not a claim of a medical relief or treatment. Did that cover?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
There you go.
So following on from what you've just said, for United States, can you put on a label that it is not FDA verified and then say that it's anti-inflammatory and joint support?
Similar to glucosamine. The glucosamine supplements can say for the relief of joint pain and problems. but only with an FDA certification can someone do that. My law firm has obtained FDA certifications for products with THC and with cannabis. So it's possible.
If you said it was not FDA verified.
And it's certified.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can.
If it is not.
If it is not.
The label says it is not FDA certified, but then says anti-inflammatory and joint support.
Okay. What's happening, and you want the United States perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. In the United States right now, there are CBD infused products all over. What happened in California with THC products is a very close analogy to my opinion of what's going to happen with the FDA, which is in California there was a change in packaging. There was a deadline for all of your packaging had to conform with all of the regulations by the 1st of June of 2018. Anybody that didn't, they wiped them off the shelf. 90% of the products in California were taken off the shelves. They could not be sold on the 2nd of June. And the 10% that remained on the shelves did gangbusters. They won market share. They're still at the top of the field. It's going to happen the same way with FDA products, with CBD infused products in the United States. We have clients right now in the process of getting certified with the FDA, because at a certain point, the FDA is going to say anybody on the shelf that doesn't have a certification from the FDA cannot be sold in the United States anywhere. And they're going to wipe them off the shelf. And the 10% that remains on the shelf that bothered to do the certification are going to do bank. Okay. Sorry, that was a long answer.
There you go.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for your time. Could you just, with your experience, could you identify the common themes you've witnessed where fledgling... Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you for your time. What are the common themes you've witnessed where fledgling retail businesses go wrong?
Retail in the United States is actually where people are making money long term. Everybody thought it was going to be the manufacturers in the early days, the people making the products, but the retailers are doing fine. In the United States, there's a tax on illegal operations called 280E. It doesn't affect CBD, but does affect cannabis. That really killed them in the beginning, but they figured it out. I mean, you know, I've been in this from day one in Washington State, and I'm going on my 6th year. It's just not that much history. But did I answer your question? I don't know how.
Yeah, sorry. I think I should have mentioned there's a specific focus on CBD infused products.
Okay, so as to retailers on CBD, the struggles are merchant banking, so your online bank account, so merchant services for online sales, because that's the vast majority of sales in the U.S. market. Now it's moving into big box stores, retailers, CVS. I mean, they're everywhere. I'm working with AMP. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of things going on right now with retailers. Everybody wants CBD products. And again, I go back to the earlier answer of, you know, right now we're in this kind of gray period where the FDA is only going after people that are making medical claims on CBD products. And there's no other enforcement going on right now, but it's going to end. So the struggles with sales with retailers, excuse me, is mostly due to the risk of getting the products pulled and the inconsistency.
That's great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? I have one more question, maybe, if that's okay, Anne. I think we talked about, or the topic is around critical success factors. If you're day one, week one, if you are 1 month, if you're 1 year in, from a I guess an owner perspective, are there any of the key metrics that are clearly identifiable that people should be aware of? outside of course, with any business, it's scalable. There's process, there's functions. Then, of course, you need to collect your cash. But specifically with either in hemp or within CBD, or is there anything specific to these areas that you think are critical success factors in terms of metrics and KPIs?
Yeah. There are two things that are huge in CBD companies that are important. The first is you have to understand that things change in the regulatory schema, and you have to establish a comfort level with being flexible. You think you're going down this path, and then the labeling requirements change, and you have to redo all of your packaging, and it's an unknown expense. What I tell all of my companies, 10% of everything you make needs to go into an emergency fund, because 10% of everything you make needs to be sitting there to adapt to the changes if you want to stay in the marketplace. And that flows into the next thing that I find very important to the success of these companies, is that there has to be one person that is running the company or owning the company and has is out of the day-to-day operations enough to be looking down the road, because what's happening next and anticipating what's happening down there is too hard. Again, it's been shocking to see how many companies get so caught up in the what I have to do today, and I've got to approve this print label job, and this formula isn't right, and I didn't get the test results, and all of the stuff that it takes. But if one person isn't looking down the road, the company is not going to have the longevity that it needs to stay in business.
Anyone else? Any more questions? Yeah, I think just on that point, Anne.
Do I have any more time?
We've got 5 more minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Maybe time for one more. I think looking down at the future, and of course, it's a dynamic industry. Mm-hmm. It's changing on the high street. It's changing online. Regulation is changing. It's a little slower, I think, certainly in the UK. And then by default, the EU are, I'm not saying dragging their heels, there's other priorities at the moment. But are there any sort of disruptive areas that you think in the future that, as you mentioned, one person with a long lens outside of the day-to-day pieces they really need to be looking at? And that could be regulation, it could be technology. We talked about payments and things like that.
Yeah.
What's your advice or what's your thoughts on that?
Secure your intellectual property and know the answer to the question, what makes my product unique? I can't tell you. I ask everybody on the floor that I talk to. It's the first thing I say. Why is your product unique? Most of them can't answer the question. And I want to shoot them and say, you're never going to make it. Don't waste any more money. Go. Because if your answer is, well, my family, we all work together to make this product. No, the consumer doesn't care about your story. They care about your product. So it's a harsh reality that half of you are going to be out of business. You're going out of business. If you can't answer that question, if there's not a compelling reason for the consumer to buy your product as opposed to the 50 other that come up when they search CBD edibles for sleep, passion isn't enough. You have to understand that there are choices in this marketplace. I just want to wrap up and say that yes, it's an ever-changing market. There are attorneys here. I'm on a panel with one tomorrow. We're doing the UK, USA compare and contrast in CBD. And I cannot tell you that how important it is that once you identify what's unique about your company, secure that intellectual property. Whether that is by keeping it a secret, whether it is by registering it, whether it is by research and development, patents are available. There are many, many ways to protect what makes your product different. I was talking with a company down there that does transdermal patches, And I happen to know that there's a company in Australia that's about to turn that on its head. There's an extraction company that I work with that is about to release an extraction for hemp that has never been seen before on this planet. There is a company that works with immediacy of uptake on edibles that has edibles down to a 10-minute infusion, which does a lot of things to help people overdosing, taking too much, not overdosing, but saying, oh, I took an edible and it's an hour has gone by and I'm still not feeling the effects, so they take more, and then they have too much in their system. Technology development, understanding that we don't know what this plant can do. We haven't fully discovered it. And anybody that is paying attention to what can I make this plant do that nobody else is making this plant do is going to win.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, Anne van Leynseele. Pleasure, thank you.
Be in the back answering questions. There are cards on some chairs. I have some cards here. Happy to talk with anybody one-on-one.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.